Good morning, everyone. We are so excited to kick off ASU+GSV 2025's first session. I could not be more excited to get to hear from three leaders who are truly at the center of this massive AI transformation in how we both learn and work. They are shaping the infrastructure, building the tooling, and building the models themselves that are going to reach millions, if not billions, of students, teachers, and institutions worldwide. For the sake of time, I'm not going to spend too much time on intros, but so that we can get into our questions. But today with me, we have Ben Gomes, who leads learning and sustainability at Google. He's the driving force behind AI integrations across Google's entire education ecosystem. This means everything from search to tools like Google Classroom, new ones like Notebook LM and Learnabout if you've tried those. Yossi Matias leads Google Research and is guiding the company's shift from not only organizing the world's information, but also enabling deeper learning through AI. And we have Johanna Voolich, the CPO responsible for YouTube's products and their user experience across all platforms and devices globally. This includes experiences for millions of learners, teachers, and learning creators as well. So I want to kick off with you, Ben. You've been at Google for 20 plus years, and you've seen Google's mission evolve, and the platform evolves over so many years. And the mission has always been to organize the world's information. Now that we're in the education realm, what is the core vision that's guiding your AI efforts for learning?
You know, it's really interesting because organizing the world's information, making it universally accessible and useful they came up with that 25 years ago. And it still ends up being very relevant today. And when I think about it, with AI, there are several parts of that mission you could highlight. So for instance, this whole process through these 25 years has been a process of trying to organize information. First of all, by understanding language, this whole trajectory from search to where we are today with AI. One of the things is being able to organize information. We use things like the knowledge graph and synonyms and things like that before in search. And today, we have the ability to take any topic and create schemas around it. So you can begin to see this in tools like Learnabout. You can begin to get answers on anything in things like the AI overviews that you see in search. And you can also begin to make learning the information much more active rather than passive. So it can actually be used for learning. So you can see that the information can become much more accessible. It can become much more useful because of becoming active. And this trajectory is something that we've been on for a long while, and it's a very natural evolution for us to go into space, to be in the space of learning, because people have always been using these tools for learning, and now they begin to use them and expect to use them in much more enhanced ways, given the capabilities of AI.
Yeah, I love that. And I think a couple months ago, I was at a Google event, and I loved how you all framed it as the future belongs to curious, and that learning happens in the workflow of search. Johanna, YouTube spans so many different end users and serves everything from media, entertainment, learning. How have you thought of all the different directions that you could embed some of these learning principles into your product?
When I think about learning at YouTube, YouTube is the largest learning library in the world. The scale is really tremendous. We serve over 2 billion people daily. And when you think about it, people are coming to YouTube voluntarily to learn. So if you think about the United States alone, 95% of people who use YouTube in the US actually come to learn something, come because of curiosity. 94% of teachers in the US use YouTube in the classroom. They choose to use YouTube in the classroom. And then because we're a platform, it actually enables really magical things. So I know Khan Academy is here, but 18 years ago, Sal Khan posted a video to YouTube, and that was a pathway to this great learning resource. 15 years ago, the Green Brothers created Crash Course, and this really helped people who are curious about different interests, and now we have a partnership with ASU and Crash Course, and people can actually take courses on YouTube and then get credit at ASU, and then transfer those credits to whatever university. And so this curiosity is actually serving as a pathway to formal accreditation. And the final thing I'd say about YouTube and learning is that we're not trying to replace schools, we're not trying to replace teachers, we're just here to help. We're here to be a supplementary resource, and And we can do that because people want to learn on YouTube, and they come to teach, and they come to learn on YouTube.
Yeah, so it seems that, oh, Ben, did you?
No, I was thinking like I love the fact that you're anchoring on curiosity, because I've always felt that is that instinct to learn that sets us apart from all the many other great apes who don't have quite that same capability that humans have, right? And that's something deeply embedded within our brains and how we are constructed. And so I think, but it requires guidance. When I think about curiosity, I also think when I was like a toddler, I took a wire and I stuck it in a socket. And I remember that day
Don't do
very
that.
clearly. Yes. That was curiosity, but it was not guided. So one of the things I think that AI enables is guiding the curiosity. And I think we can do that in many contexts, because now we can understand a whole domain, because AI now gives you good schemas for the domain. And that allows you to guide the user towards interesting paths where there will be interesting things to find. And that, I think, drives curiosity forward. It makes it that journey much more interesting for the user.
Yeah, I love that you're framing it as guiding, because we all know, I mean, YouTube's been available for the last 20 or so years. Education has never been a lack of information problem. It's been a guiding problem, having someone to tell you how to get from point A to point B. So Yossi, you are part of the team that is driving a ton of research across Google, but how are you thinking about embedding some of these learning principles so that we can truly, deliver on the promise of an AI tutor that can guide our students?
Yes, so first, we're in really exciting times. Obviously, AI is a term that we're hearing a lot here, and actually going to the AI show, it was actually quite interesting. We just had a chat earlier. One of the things that strike me is that you see all these great applications out there, and startups and initiatives, essentially using technologies that just a few years ago were kind of aspirational. And one of the fascinating part about using technologies and AI in general is really to see the progress and how do we unlock things. In fact, leading research, one of the fascinating thing about research is driving what we call the magic cycle of research, which essentially is to identify all these problems that today are blocking us for the kind of things we're dreaming about, and then just make them assume to just work. And, reflecting back on, a few years ago, I was really interested to see how can we actually get different modalities for interaction, voice, and having the opportunity to actually have a conversation. And at the time, it was kind of aspirational. And then when we started having the ability to actually understand speech, and then, or to talk back in a very natural way, and then build a natural conversation, these were all kind of aspirational, and now I see them just as building blocks in what we do. So now we can actually focus on what really matters, which is how do we actually capture that curiosity that Ben was talking about, leveraging on these platforms that Johanna was talking about, and letting AI and technology essentially enable those things in a seamless way. Because really I think the role model is actually the teacher. So the teacher, a good teacher and a good parent, and here to Ben's examples, I relate to Richard Feynman, both as a teacher who managed to make things so interesting that so many people actually got in love with physics and actually inspired to take that either as a career or as an area that they were interested in. But he was also sharing about how he was learning about birds from his father on a more opportunistic way, in the serendipity, catching the moment, learning about something, learning physics just by observing a phenomena around us. So to me, the question is, how can we actually use technology to build on this kind of curiosity, serendipitous, catching the moment, getting the magic, and somehow getting closer to that? Now, the premise with AI and with technology in general is actually enable those, because we're getting these building blocks. So if in the past it was just a basic of organizing the information with knowledge graphs and being able to find the right patterns, now, of course, with generative AI, we're able, and large language models, we're able to actually get better understanding, starting to see reasoning about it. And then part of our work is actually building into that and trying to build models that are actually better for that. LearnLM is something we can talk about, is one of our attempts actually to get closer to that.
I'd actually love for you to expand a little bit on LearnLM. I actually read the full 70-page paper. It was very interesting. But as you think about LearnLM as, building on these units of intelligence, but also these building blocks of multimodality, personalization. How are you thinking about piecing all of this into the product layer? Obviously, you all have launched so many things, from Career Dreamer, Notebook LM. Where do you shift your attention towards, and how do you use these ingredients?
Yeah, so one thing, again, when talking about progress, obviously the progress of large language model is pretty, I think we're all awed at the pace in which we can see the progress, which I think is fascinating. It all starts with the question, what are we solving for? And one of the important things that we're looking into when we build these models is to look into what are the metrics, what are the evals, what are we trying to optimize for? Now, one thing we learned actually even earlier on in the health space is that we can take a large language model and adapt it, learn and kind of fine-tune it or add more information to build it towards making a better job and answering questions in the medical space. And we saw this significant jump, and then later on we actually teach the models to actually pace up with that. And similarly, one question we're asking ourselves is how can we take those large language models, make them work, solve for the problems that we really want in the context of learning and education. For example, to be able to do leveling, to be able to understand when it's the right time not to respond with an answer, but to respond with a guiding principle. And think about all these, and importantly, the way to actually build that was actually to work with people from that are experienced, with teachers, people who are experts in pedagogy kind of what would make it a difference in learning, and trying to then make those adjustments and build those so-called learn-LM models to actually serve better these capabilities, and then build features on top of that. So for example, Quiz Me, which is an ability to actually get some questions around that, or the ability to do leveling and whatnot. So learn-LM is about how to take whatever we have and build the models that are going to serve us in a way that solve or optimize to the things that we really want to in the context of learning and education, and doing that actually in collaboration with the ecosystem to actually guide us to where we need to go to.
And I think doing that also really rigorously so that we're measuring the outcomes, making sure that we are improving things. I think at the model level, that is what we are trying to do. And at the high level, the product level, I think it depends on particular products. Like in the context of classroom, the role of the product is to actually help the teacher. So there we are thinking about like what are the tools that would actually help the teacher. In the context of YouTube, it's the creators, really. We want to enhance what the creators can do so they can create more active experiences. I don't know if any of y'all have seen this experiment we call ShiftBot, where you take this creator, Daniel Schiffman, and is as an avatar who's then present in your coding IDE, because people relate to creators in a very particular way. So it all depends on the particular product. And then there are some cases where we see new opportunities. Like with Notebook LM, one of the key problems in education is grounding on the material the student actually has to know. And so in Notebook, we allow you to do that, so you answer questions with respect to that. And then learn about organizing the information with respect to a schema that the student needs to understand. So there are some cases where we're trying new things, in other cases we're trying to embed learning principles into our existing products.
Go ahead.
I was just going to talk a little bit about how we use AI in YouTube, the YouTube products. So basically, when I think about AI at YouTube, I think about kind of AI classic, which is the invisible AI, and then the more modern AI, which is the generative AI that you see. And when I think about invisible AI, I think about things like our recommendation system and our search engine, where we've been using AI to connect creators to the people who want to see their content. And we've been doing that for many years, 10, 12, 15 years. But then beyond connecting people to content, a second area that's really important in AI, which comes with generative AI, is reach. So right now at YouTube, we have a feature, we call it we call it the language track. And so with any video, you could put a language track in say you make the video in English, you could put a track in another language. And typically people will hire people to dub your videos and put them in another language. But with AI, one thing that we've been working on is how can you do that automatically? And so then you imagine the tremendous reach you get from that. You have a creator who creates content, say in English, and then people in any language around the world could learn from that. They could get that information in their language. And then the third way that we use AI at YouTube is to help people learn more deeply. Yossi talked about chatbots being an ingredient. Well, in YouTube, we have a button called Ask, where at the bottom of a video, you can click Ask, and then you can dig in. You can have a chat interaction with that video. You can try and learn more. What's happening in the video? What did they say there? Can I learn more about this concept? And this allows people to dig deeper and get that kind of understanding that they are looking for.
Yeah, I want to reflect also back on the fact that if we look back and see where we were just not that long ago and where we are today, one of the aspirational things to me is how to make AI what I like to call ambient AI, ambient intelligence actually, which is this notion that the power of technology is that it works so well, you actually don't think about it. And today, arguably, we're already doing it for a lot. I mean, whenever we're talking with our phone, I mean, this was not possible just 10 years ago, right? And now we're just talking and assume that it's going to understand us, and typically does, or when it talks back to us. And sometimes you'd ask me, how did I actually read a paper or an article? And I wouldn't actually necessarily remember which language I did it, or if it was reading it or listening to it, or both. Because this became kind of a little ambient. Now, conversational is now getting into that, and I think that whenever something is becoming kind of ambient intelligence, it just works. In a way, actually, looking for information became ambient, but you just Google it, right? Thanks, Ben. and so forth. So to me, the important thing to keep in mind, because I know we're all here in a conversation to see where we're heading, how can we use technology, AI, and otherwise, the important thing is that with the pace of progress, certain things we're going to see much more approaching towards this ambient intelligence in the context of learning as well. And then to me, the question is, how do we actually want to envision the future of interaction? It's really becoming the question, how do we see the future in which we actually have technology that practically becomes a possible tutor and teacher and a good friend? And how do we actually want to guide it? How do we want to guide the teaching and learning of that for the young generation? Because in the pace we're heading, actually, we're going to see much more progress in the next year, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, and we actually have an opportunity to help shape it.
Yeah, I love that you phrase it as ambient technology, because I think for so long our ways of interacting with computers have been largely digital, and now for the first time ever, just even seeing what you all are launching around agentic functions, the ability for AI systems to now process multimodal content, video content. For the first time ever, you can now talk to a video, which I think 10 years ago or 5 years ago even, that seemed like such a foreign concept. And I feel like you're kind of getting to this point around the lines blurring around what is traditional learning. It doesn't necessarily have to happen in a classroom. As you think about tools like Learnabout, Notebook LM, they seem equally applicable to both students, people in the knowledge workforce, professionals. Is the line between education and work blurring? What do you see as learning in the flow of work?
That's an interesting question. I think, when I think about all of the Google tools, they tend to span that boundary of school, work, and life. Like, people use them in school, like they use search, they use YouTube, they use, not Google, they use Workspace, not necessarily Google Classroom, but in school, work, and life, right? The ways in which they use them are a little bit different because the needs are a little bit different in different contexts. So when I think about using things within the context of a school, you need to be comprehensive in what you know. So if you are going to be quizzed about something, you may want flashcards to remember something there. So it's a slightly different use case of the same kind of tool because you need to be comprehensive. You're going to be tested on something. You need to know all about it. In the context of work, you need to do some particular task. It's a little bit more like project-based learning in the context of school, right? So there is overlap there, but it's not quite the same use case. You're more specific in what you want. There's a lot more material you're going to deal with. So if I think about something like Notebook LM, right, it is going to, grounding on material is very useful. Where if at work, it's grounding on the materials you're familiar with, the other documents and decks and so on that you're dealing with at work. If you're in school, it's the materials your teacher has given you. You want to ground on them in both cases. In school, it matters because, hey, the other day I was looking at this thing of like memorizing parts of the brain, right? There are many different ways you can break down the brain into different substructures. And if you're learning it for school, you better do it the way your teacher expects you to. Because if you do it a different way, you won't be able to follow the class. And work, it's a little bit different because you're driving things. So I think the ways in which you'll use the tools are different, but there'll be a lot of crossover of how the tools are built and the usage across these things, just as we've seen, I think.
Yeah, almost productivity and learning in parallel.
Yeah.
I do think one thing that's interesting is, I think there's undoubtedly massive unlocks with AI in the productivity space. People are now kind of questioning around broadly what happens to our learning, our ability to learn how to learn, metacognition, and I think everyone in this room has, thought deeply about this idea that we have a lot of chocolate-covered broccoli in the education space. As you all think about delivering on learning outcomes, delivering on actual learning experiences versus just engagement, Johanna, I'd love to ask how you thought of this, especially with YouTube, as one of the most engaging platforms out there, how you thought about balancing pedagogy and what users want.
Well, when you think about YouTube, the vast majority of the learning that happens on YouTube is it's voluntary. People are coming to YouTube because they just want to learn. And when we evaluate YouTube, maybe I'll talk about how we evaluate YouTube overall, is we are trying to bring value to people. So we look at what people watch and how do they feel about that. So we use surveys to find out if their time on YouTube brought value. Within YouTube, there is an academic corpus, so a piece of our library is academically focused, and we try to use pedagogical methods to evaluate that as well. But what I would say is the vast majority of learning on YouTube isn't in the academic corpus. So to make this real, I might give an example of my son was trying to learn Spanish. So he had resources through school, but he also used YouTube to look up videos and watch them in Spanish. So we wouldn't have even known that he was trying to learn, but we would evaluate it. Was he gaining value from the platform? Would he have answered a survey that said that video brought him satisfaction? And that's how we think about it at YouTube.
Almost like ambient learning.
Yeah, I'm personally mostly passionate about those kind of serendipitous learning, which is in context and personalized in the sense of how do I learn things related to what I already know and what I care about and what's of interest to me, and how to capture the moment. And I know that we've done it, I mean, Ben and I discussed it so many times when we were working on search. And now the opportunity is actually to capture those moments. And quite often, actually, we try to do that with kids, right? We try to explain a notion with something they care about, if it's sports or certain characters, and give the examples in that context. And if you think about the opportunity to actually do that, I think this is pretty significant. Now, going back to the question of this continuation and formal versus non and the K-12 versus life, I mean, we'll talk now about lifelong learning. We see actually in our work, we see that we all actually need to learn and adapt and learn new technologies, and we see anything from engineers to any other profession that are actually learning new things. And arguably, learning to learn is one of the most important skills out there. So I think in a way there's going to be some continuum, and also even within anybody who's studying something within a formal structure, it doesn't matter if it's work or school. I think, again, the big opportunity is to have this opportunity to learn also outside of that. It's like learning a language. I mean, you can learn a language in class, and then you can practice it, and then you learn a language just by reading some articles in that language or just having conversation. And I think that the same may apply to many other disciplines. And to me, the really important question is how to identify doing it effectively and how to leverage technologies just as a tool to do that, and keeping in mind that actually the role model to me is still the amazing teachers. You know, I was just having an event just a few weeks ago, and I was talking about AI for education, etc. But then at the end, I highlighted that to me still the inspiration is my math teacher from high school, and I was fortunate to have him in the audience. And highlighting, hey, this is still as important as ever. Now the question is, how can we take all this technology and empower those amazing teachers, and perhaps even mimic some of what they're doing for those who actually don't have teachers around the world, because this is one of the ability to actually make it, to enable that to kids around the world who may not have teachers like some of the more fortunate ones have.
I'm curious how you see the role of the teacher evolving in future classrooms.
Again, to me, it's a technology that enables. It's in a way related to how we're talking about how to use technology in the world of health, which is when you think about so there are two things: how to actually enable the teachers to focus on what matters rather than, and have the technology to help so think about as if a teacher has those many AI assistants helping them out on many things. And they can actually then focus on how to guide them and leverage on them and have actually the attention to what matters in the classroom. So to me, that's one of the big opportunities that we actually have.
You know, for me, I think like there's something special about how humans learn because of other humans. I think as adults, we tend to think we're self-driven learners, but quite often, I don't think that's quite the case. We're driven because of peers and other things. I have two examples from my life. I got interested in geology and I got interested in woodworking. Now, you can bore people with geology very quickly, and I could not find anybody else interested in geology, and I lost interest in it. Woodworking, on the other hand, I found other people who are interested in woodworking, the interest stayed. So there is the role of the human, whether it's a teacher, a parent, or a peer, is really important. And I don't think it's in a way that we don't quite understand, but it's built into us. Humans mimic other humans. They want to please other humans. They want to impress other humans. And that part, I think, is central in the process. And I don't think we should lose that in the process of learning. I think it's really important. We need to enhance that. With creators, people develop a relationship with the creator. It's another human being who is giving them that information. Very few people would say, like, I am where I am today because I read this amazing book. They will say I am where I am today because my parent helped me, pointed me in this direction. I had this amazing teacher. Those are the things that change lives, and I don't think we should forget the human in all of this.
I love that. I know we are coming up on time, and I have many, many more questions, but you all have a very unique window into the future, into where the tech is heading next. What is your personal moonshot idea for the next frontier of AI in education? You can project out to 2030, 2050 even. What does that future look like? And you can bring up things that might not currently exist, but you think should.
I think, yes, go ahead.
I'm just going to piggyback on what Ben was saying about creators. So YouTube creators are the heart of everything that we do. And so we imagine that AI actually is going to amplify creators' voices. So when you're trying to teach about a concept that maybe you didn't know how to illustrate, you can use tools like AI to communicate much more deeply. And then you can connect to many, many more people around the world. So imagine that anyone who has a cell phone anywhere, through things like dubbing, can have access to all the most high-quality educational content.
I think from my perspective, in terms of the future, there are points where learning can happen and somebody can be unlocked. A child can be unlocked, even an adult can be unlocked at a particular point. But they need to be given a little bit more guidance at that moment. So for me, during COVID, I got interested in botany and I started looking at plants. What helped me was Google Lens, because I could now figure out the names of plants, where before I couldn't. So I began to learn about the divisions of the plant kingdom, and I actually created a terrarium in evolutionary order. I could do a bunch of things just because I had the tools to do it in that moment. I didn't know anybody around me who knew botany. So I think that notion of ambient, like you're saying, ambient intelligence, but an ambient tutor who can be there when you need it, to help you take that extra step, to guide you down that path of curiosity, where you start with something, but they can help you take that one step further. I think now with open-ended questions and AI, that's just becoming so much more feasible. And you're seeing the beginnings of all the multimodal stuff. We're not there yet, but we will get there.
Yeah, and something that even has that memory baked into it. Longitudinally can follow you and holistically. Yossi?
Yeah, I think that we should take the assumption that, it's something I actually was reminded 6 years ago. I was talking about towards ambient intelligence. And my final words were that with the current pace of technology, if you can dream it, you can probably build it. And looking into what happened since these 6 years, I'm actually quite amazed. We did much more than I would even dream of. So to me, we should think about the future, and not even that long as you highlighted, just in a few years, where practically any capability that we are thinking about AI doing, it probably mostly will be able to do. Now the question in my mind, how are we going to use it? How are we going to guide? And then actually goes to the question of how do we set the right objectives for that? Because when you think about those tutors and AI that is helping and the way to actually adapt, in a way, it actually is going to do a pretty good job in directing to what's actually it's supposed to solve for. So I think our objective is really to make sure that we are very good in setting the right objective, like a good parent or a good teacher. If you set the right objective, you have all these assistants that you have from AI to actually help you doing that, that's actually going to make the biggest difference in my mind.
I love that. Please thank me, or please join me in thanking our amazing panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you.